Staying Warm by Clay Tarleton Hensley. When Old Man Winter wakes up, the world retreats to their respective caves as the legions of frost gallop across the land, binding everything unlucky enough to be caught in its path with frost and ice. Fire is the only safe haven, the only refuge. But this year, fire will be what turns against the people in a small town in Michigan. Fire will be the harbinger of the freeze. The tires left treads in the snow as they ground to a halt in front of the blackened skeleton of the one proud family home. And as her boots plopped onto the wet ground awaiting her, she noticed the pieces sprawled about in the shape of a forlorn mouth, almost as if the property's remains were calling its former occupants, asking, pleading for answers. Why did you leave me? The woman's eyes roved over the ash-smeared lawn, coming to rest on two huddled figures about 5 or 6 feet away from the front door, or where the front door used to stand, given the cracked and blistered doorway leading towards collapse. They were locked together in a final embrace. Not even a crowbar could pry them apart, and they'd likely just shatter into bloody pieces if you tried. The couple are glazed in a sheen of translucent ice, sprinkled with frosted snow, a grim centerpiece for morbid cake. To the reporter, it was obvious what had happened. The couple had fled the burning household and collapsed in despair on the lawn of their home, holding each other for comfort and watching in abject horror as their life burnt to a crisp. She turns away from the depressing display before her, fixating instead on the gleaming lens of the camera being set on a tripod just a few feet away. Her cameraman bent down behind his unit and gave her a thumbs up before counting down on his fingers. A little red light atop the camera shutter blinked red as the film began to roll. This is the scene of another tragedy rocking our quiet little town. 2 more people were caught outside in a record-breaking snowstorm as their house burned down, an eerie mimic of the horrible accident of last year's Haven Apartments inferno. To the viewers at home, she seemed perfectly calm and collected on the television with the burned house in the background as she recounts what happened last night according to her notes. Many such viewers, like a young woman with fading blue hair, watch from their couches with fearful curiosity. Her deep, ocean blue eyes are wide and gnaws on a hung thumbnail with anxious teeth. Her shivering legs are held to her chest with her other hand as she watches the rest of the report. "How many deaths does that make, Roxanne?" The voice of a man off-screen can be heard, directing to the reporter, who answers with a finger resting on her earpiece. "This makes 8 victims so far, Dan. 8 victims were horrifically forced out of their homes due to what seems like yet another malfunctioning heater that erupted into an uncontrollable blaze. This is the 3rd incident where repeat circumstances has led to accidental deaths. And, just as before, emergency services were too far away from the isolated home to save them." The screen transitions to the male reporter she'd heard before, sitting at a desk, and seems to look straight at the woman watching on the couch. Each word that slips past his lips makes her heart beat faster, and her arms tighten closer to her body. "Emergency services are desperately urging everyone to make sure their heating unit is properly cleaned and maintained. Or, if it is just too old, just pull up your straps and buy a new one. These tragic accidents can be avoided with proper care. Please, do everything you can to be safe this holiday season." At the end of Dan's speech, Roxanne can be heard off-screen yelling in an irritated shrill, "It's Christmas season, you stupid Her microphone is cut short while Dan tries to hold back a small smirk while winking at the camera. Wilhelmina, or Wil for short, gets up off the couch shivering with wrapped arms as she tiptoes across the wooden floor, but she keeps one ear peeked towards the TV as she walks away. Even though she's wearing her favorite and warmest black and white striped socks, they somehow can't hold back the tickling sears of the cold floor. She reaches her green landline phone on the wall and slowly pushes in a series of numbers and impatiently waits for an answer as she continues watching the television, which now has Dan recounting the events of last year's Haven Apartments fire. For those of you who don't know, last year, the mega complex Haven Apartments, which was also attached to a mini-mall, held almost 1,000 residents and caught fire completely, burning to the ground during a severe winter storm. The unfortunate victims were all caught outside due to a slow start from emergency services. This was the fault of a misdelivered address from the malfunctioning security system, which caused a delay in communication and prevented responders from reaching the residents before most of them had frozen to death. The cause of the fire was found to be old heaters, as well as faulty ventilation, which seems to have marked the start of a horrifying case of repeat fires. So, if you don't have a reason to buy another AC this winter, we all hope you do now. Vil nervously hammers a few keys on her cell phone. Her body is fidgeting, and her eyes constantly peer at the nearby air conditioner. The humming icebox that's been on all summer, all spring, and all last winter as well.
Hey, babe.
A woman on the phone answers, shushing a playfully yapping dog in her background with a soft giggle. In a thick Swedish accent, Vil replies with a timid and cute voice.
There was another fire. Did you get my text?
Vil wasn't sure Ryley heard her as she babbled to the pup about who was on the phone, but then she answered.
No, I can't get texts in town. You know that. You're too far out. I'm meeting the guy now. Don't worry. He'll even install it.
Vil looks down at the small table beneath the phone and picks up a newspaper cutout. In a soothing and quiet voice, she replies,
Ryley, the advert doesn't say anything about installing it. How do you know he'll do it?
Without hesitation or doubt in her voice, Ryley responds,
I'll make him.
Several hours later, Ryley was inspecting Vil's new outfit choice from the counter, as Vil modeled in the threshold of the hallway within their shared home. Vil is wearing an oversized black jacket with the hood drawn so tightly that you can only see her eyes. It was an anamorphically designed jacket, featuring 2 eyes of its own on top of the hood, which acted as a mouth, full of teeth on the lining of the edge of the fabric falling around her head, so it looks like she's being eaten. Ryley talked her into wearing shorts, a choice she regretted dutifully now that she saw how the jacket covered them, leaving just her pale white legs. Ryley is smiling in the kitchen, holding her phone out, pointing at Vil.
Okay, now do jumping jacks.
Vil begins to do jumping jacks, while the sounds of plastic and shifting metal rings from the other side of the kitchen, where a repairman cussed over an AC at the end of the right-hand hallway from Ryley. The sound of Vil's feet thumping against the floor was lost amongst the bangs and clatters, but Ryley raised her voice above the din.
That's my baby. Look at them sexy legs.
Vil halts abruptly, and from the confines of her closed hood, Ryley's able to discern a muffled joke.
Is this a sexual video?
To which Ryley immediately replies affirmatively. Vil cries out in indignation from the folds of her jacket while walking away, covering her legs.
Oh my god!
To which Ryley just laughs. Their dog barks playfully as he gallops after Vil, chasing her up the stairs and prancing about her feet the whole way. Ryley is smiling as she uploads the video to an app on her phone, meandering around towards the hall across from where Vil disappeared upstairs. Leaning against the threshold, she's able to see Vil's feet clambering to the second landing from her position, almost directly opposite from the staircase, before turning to face the tall man wearing a warm coat, who is currently tinkering on their air conditioner, which they'd bought from him.
Can I get 1,000 likes, please?
She finalizes the caption on the video before posting it and pocketing her phone, turning her attention to the repairman.
So is this done or what? I thought you said this was new.
Ryley asks pointedly, eyeing the sparklingly clean, exteriorly, AC unit, which now adorned the window at the end of the hall. She cast a glance over her shoulder at the staircase, where she could catch snippets of babbled and barked conversations from Vil and the dog tempting her upstairs. The man puts a screwdriver in his pocket and then plugs in the machine before replying. The window-mounted AC buzzed to life, gasping its first breath as the fans picked up speed somewhere within the unit. "Yes, ma'am. Brand new, and it should be working now." He presses the heating button and begins tapping the machine to increase the temperature. "This'll get all the way up to 90 degrees. He demonstrates his claim by actually raising the temperature up to 90. Ryley quickly moves towards him, shoving him aside.
No, thank you. 70 is just fine.
She lowers the temperature before continuing.
So why was this so cheap then?
The man picks up a tool bag and begins making his way towards the front door. "I work in a motel in town. Boss ordered too many units, and there's not storage to fit them all. You wouldn't believe it, but he tried to get us to take them home with us. His wife eventually convinced him to sell the rest."
Take them home with you? Like, keep a bunch of extra ACs at your house until one at the motel breaks down?
The man nods his head with a tired and annoyed look on his face, as if this is something he hasn't quite gotten used to, but always expects. Ignoring the strange expression, Ryley swept an arm towards the front door, ushering him towards it as she said,
Well, thanks a lot, man. If it breaks down, can I call you? My girl has been really scared lately with all the accidents happening.
Ryley stands in the threshold of the front door as she watches him trudge across the crunching snow towards his black pickup truck that has an angel hood ornament. He answers over his shoulder. "Yeah, anytime. But you'll have to pay for it like anybody else. You two stay warm now." Outside, the sun above them hides behind blackening clouds. The branches of the thick forest surrounding can barely hold their heads up under the crushing weight of frost. Ryley is covered up in jeans and 2 layers on top, so the slowly lowering temperature isn't bothering her like it appears to be those trees, allowing her to stand in the open doorway watching the man drive away. After his truck is out of sight at the end of the muddy road, she closes the door behind her and takes a seat on the stoop. She takes a deep breath and looks in awe at the forest around her home. The trees seem endless, with 5 more appearing behind each one that she spots. No animals in sight, but there are tiny paw prints here and there marking their existence. At the end of the muddy road is yet another muddy and quickly freezing road. When spring hits, someone comes by and tries to fill it in with truckloads of rocks and pebbles. But no matter how often or how much they leave, traffic always knocks them all away eventually. By winter, all the rocks are gone, and whoever tends the road waits until spring once more. Ryley ponders on that.
But why, though? Wouldn't it be a great time to put rocks down since they'll be frozen in the whole time? Wish the city would just pave it. But then again, if the city was out here, we wouldn't want to be in it. So, double-edged sword, I guess.
Back inside, Vil is still wearing her shorts, but left the jacket behind. When she reaches the bottom of the stairs, with her dog faithfully trailing along behind her, she comments,
Goodness, so hot already. Come on, boy. Let's see how the heater is doing.
Vil cut her own thoughts short when she spotted the control pad on the AC, currently reading 90 degrees, and quickly lowers it to 75.
Jesus, Ray. Why so high? I like it hot, but not like that.
Vil looks around the kitchen before going into the living room.
Dry?
She calls out. No response was heard, so she turned to the pup at her heels.
Okay, boy. Where's Ray? Go find her, Munchkin.
The large Doberman, whom was quite too big to be called something so small, makes a happy gruff and pads towards the front door, happily leading the way. When Vil reaches the door, she looks through the small window at the top of it to see Ryley is sitting outside, silently observing the snow on the trees. The dead stillness of them outside causes Vil to shiver, thinking to herself,
Maybe I should turn up the heat a little.
She turns back around and heads to the kitchen.
Lucky her, she can be comfortable in the cold. I don't have that kind of luxury with my condition. Winters here are deadly. But I love our little home. So quiet.
Back in the kitchen once more, she reaches for the touchpad on the heater to turn it up, but stops when she notices that it already did.
77. Didn't I turn it to 75?
With a puzzled look, she instead decides to turn it back to the previous temperature. Perhaps it's warm enough. Night has claimed the sun. The jaws of dusk have risen to swallow the light. While during the day, the cold had been held back by a faint and desperate shield of warmth that could barely prevent a snowflake. Now that it's night, the night has free rein to terraform the earth. The innocence of the day is corrupted by the dark, and the cold fingers of winter take hold on the land once more, leaving behind icicle traps on roof edges, slickened ice roads, and buildings of translucent craftsmanship, all in honor of their Lord Cold. All kneel before the grim majesty of winter. Everyone and everything succumbs to the creeping chill of the endless. That same evening, Ryley is standing by the living room window, staring outside at the snow as it relentlessly beats against the glass. And the howling wind combined with it makes it seem like the snow is calling out to her, begging her to let it in as it whips itself into a frenzy against the window.
Why are you always watching out there?
Vil asks, curling up on the couch in warmer clothes and bundled up, while Ryley is now dressed down a little, wearing shorts and a tank top, trying to cool down.
You know, I just like the cold, is all. It's so beautiful outside.
Ryley blushes as she pulls herself away from what little view there is, now that it's pitch black outside. She sits down on the couch next to Munchkin, who is nestled nicely on the far side of the couch, and Vil leans closer to Ryley to cuddle into her. Munchkin shifts a bit closer after the pair had settled, leaving all three of them cozy in their warm abode, shielded from the assault of frost outside. A few minutes later, Ryley sits up straight and looks at Vil with a cheery smile.
Wanna dance?
Vil casts her a suspicious glance and asks,
Is this one of your videos?
Ryley laughs and tells her no, to which makes Vil smile back and gets up off the couch. Ryley takes out her phone and sets the speakers in the corner of the room to pour out gentle music. Ryley sets her phone down on the couch, then begins to slow dance with Vil, while Munchkin perches his head up on the back of the couch and looks towards the kitchen. Not long after they start dancing, they're somehow quickly sweating, and Ryley stops to take a breather, just as the landline in the kitchen starts ringing.
I'll get it.
Ryley peeks above the music as she flaps her shirt back and forth to get in a breeze. She answers the phone, and as she arrives to the handset, she notices the temperature spike on the control panel of the AC for some reason.
Hello?
On the other end is a deep, heavy breathing, to which Ryley gets the instant and quite aggravated urge to slam down the phone, thinking,
Ugh, I hate prank callers.
Though before she has the chance to follow through, the breathing turns into a malicious voice with a simple question.
Staying warm?
As if on cue, Ryley can suddenly smell the unmistakable scent of burning. The phone clicks, and behind her, Vil can be heard asking if she's cooking something, as Ryley spins on heel to check the AC. A small string of smoke is whispering up from the heater, paired with a continuous faint beeping ringing from the unit that she hadn't heard start. Ryley finds in horror the temperature is somehow set to 90.
Oh shit!
She shouts, as suddenly the beeping stops, and a burst of fire blazes to life from somewhere within the AC, and the wisp of smoke becomes a thick, black plume, rising like an ancient djinn finally free from its prison. Munchkin begins barking up a storm and leaps up off the couch, zipping upstairs for safety as the fire breaches the AC and begins to spread into the wall.
Munchkin!
Wil shouts as she races towards the stairs. knowing there will be no safety for the dog in higher floors with the fire raging across the ceiling of the kitchen. Ryley watches the fire in abject horror as it slithers up to the ceiling like a flaming serpent in a matter of moments. Wil's screams as she searches for the dog are drowned out by the roar of the fire spiraling out of control. But she still manages to break Ryley's stupor, and she lunges forward to rip the AC's power cord out of the wall. Next, she runs to the pantry, violently yanking it open. A black, empty bracket awaits her behind the cupboard door.
Where's the fire extinguisher? It's supposed to be here.
Ryley screams internally as she sees nothing but brooms and canned goods inside. Panic wells up inside of her as she begins frantically tearing open nearby cupboards, spilling past her lips in the form of anger.
Oh my god, where's the fucking fire extinguisher? Wilhelmine, where's the goddamn fire extinguisher?
Meanwhile, Wil runs upstairs and down the hall to their room, which is located above the kitchen, and kneels on the floor at the foot of the bed. Munchkin is hiding underneath and stares at her with shaking, fearful eyes, so she calls to him in the quietest and sweetest voice she can muster.
Come on, boy. Come on. The fire is almost out. We gotta go.
Downstairs, Ryley is throwing open the cabinet doors below the sink. She finds a bucket. Pulling it out, she almost tears off the spout's handle trying to fill it with water. Next, she grabs a towel and begins beating the growing flame that's licking the edges of the upper wall above her and making its way towards the back door.
I put it in the bathroom!
Wil shouts from upstairs, making Ryley cough, not just from smoke fumes, but rage as she mentally admonishes her spouse.
Fucking why, though?
Simultaneously, upstairs, Wil is reaching the end of her rope with Munchkin, who has adamantly parked themselves under the bed. Wil puffs and stands up.
I can get him out later. I need to get right that fire extinguisher. I don't know why I put it in the bathroom.
Wil runs, her feet audibly slapping against the wooden floor as each step gets warmer from the fire spreading downstairs. Bursting into the bathroom, she rips the fire extinguisher out of the cupboard and charges back towards the top of the stairs.
I hope it isn't too late. We can't end up like everyone else.
Sprinting around the edge of the banister, Wil spots Ryley anxiously awaiting her at the landing.
Here!
Wil shouts. Ryley sprints towards the stairs where Wil is holding out the fire extinguisher. Ryley yanks it out of her hand and pulls out the pin as she scuttles back to the kitchen to quickly blast the fire. Whilst Wil dashes back upstairs to continue her attempt at coaxing Munchkin out from under the bed, Ryley hoses down the flaming AC, spewing white foam all over, suffocating the source of the flames, and gradually shifting her aim to the ceiling, which is now entirely engulfed in flames, which she battles to keep from crawling down the walls through a thick blanket of smog. The smell of melted plastics and burning wood fills the air in a choking black haze. Just when she thought there'd be no more air left to breathe in the room, the fire is abruptly snuffed out as it began, allowing Ryley to back out of the kitchen and rush to the front door to let the smoke out. It pours through the open threshold, swirling through the blizzard air and dancing into the sky. As soon as the doors open, a gust of snow forces itself inside the house, almost knocking Ryley off her feet, unprepared for the sudden, vicious assault. Freezing snow pelts her face like thousands of tiny needles, piercing deep into her flesh. She shields herself, then backs up towards the kitchen, trying not to breathe in the smoke. Coughing, she turns back around to look at the damage done by the fire. The walls are blackened and charred, peeling and destroyed. Between gasps and guffaws, she realizes the smoke doesn't seem to be going anywhere despite the small vent offered by the front door. So she makes her way towards the back door. She screams as her bare foot touches the hallway floor, searing the bottom of it slightly, the sensation of which is followed by a flush of annoyed rage that bubbles past her tongue.
Ah! Fucking shit, AC!
As Ryley is looking around for her shoes, she feels another gust of cold air force itself into the house, causing her whole body to shiver. But this didn't come from the front door, and Wil is still upstairs. So where is this draft coming from? Turning away from the living room, she peers at the back door and sees a tall figure standing in the doorway, covered head to toe in warm snow gear. Not a speck of skin is exposed to the elements.
I already put it out.
She tells the figure, for a split second thinking it could be their neighbor or the fire department. But that thought is quickly dismissed when she notices the tall figure is brandishing an unusual object in their hands. At first glance, it looks like a long tube, but upon gazing at it further, she notices the strange device is attached to tubes and a hose that trail off behind him. When her eyes reach the blackened and oil-stained nozzle, her heart plummets, as if falling into a deep cavern before rocketing back up in adrenalized terror, causing her heart beating a mile a minute against her chest. The nozzle boasts a small but vibrant flame, flickering to and fro. Her eyes meet the soulless goggles of the figure in the doorway. As they shout above the roaring winter grass behind them, their voice is muffled, but clear and eerily familiar.
Staying warm?
At that very moment upstairs, Munchkin groans as Vil finally manages to convince him to crawl out from under the bed.
Come on, boy. The house is on fire. We need to get below the smoke, not above it.
Munchkin crawls out, patting his paws across the warm floor before giving a single bark of indignation, with a slight undertone of terror, and jumping up into Vil's outstretched arms, almost knocking her completely over in the process. Vil squeals as she tries to stay on her feet under his weight.
Okay, Munchkin, let's go.
She groans with the struggle to march down the hall, half holding and half dragging her scared Doberman towards the top of the stairs. Back downstairs, Ryley chokes on the still, effervescent smoke as she gasps when the figure in the doorway launches a heavy stream of scorching flame at the kitchen ceiling, a dragon's breath reigniting the inferno that will take their home. Ryley whips around to make a break for the stairs, screaming at Vil. Before she can take a step onto the stairs, however, the stream of flame whips in front of her like a serpent, hissing and blocking her path as if it were sentient. The flames engorge themselves on the wallpaper, devouring and multiplying as it smears itself up the stairway. Ryley falls backward as she screams, the flames reflecting in her terrified eyes as she sees Vil at the top of the stairs, clutching Munchkin, barking and yelping in her arms. Their eyes meet as the slithering dragon roars and envelops the stairway, slowly making its way up to Vil.
Run! Get out!
Ryley screams as loud as she can, her thoughts echoing a desperate, "Please!" as fear overwhelms her and she scrambles away from the heat. Vil shields Munchkin from the flames as she watches Ryley charge out the front door, braving the storm, but leaving them behind to their fate. A tear drips down her face as she watches the flames make their way closer up the stairs.
Ryley?
She whimpers aloud, but internally screaming.
Why did you leave me?
Finally snapping out of her daze, she zips back up the hall towards their bedroom, carrying the terrified and struggling dog in her arms. His oversized paws dragged against the floor as Vil struggled to keep him at chest height, her mind a whirl of thoughts.
How did the fire get out of control? Why didn't she say something?
Running over to the window and dropping Munchkin next to it, who claws and barks at it while Vil struggles to open it, she finds that the heat from the blaze had loosened the ice on the windows. The pane gives way with a screech as it slides across the tracks, and quick as a flash, Munchkin clambers over the sill and out onto the roof. The petrified pup continues to howl from the sloped eaves as Vil quickly rummages around the room for the jacket she was wearing earlier, snatching it up from a crumpled pile of clothes in the corner of the room and pulling it over her arms while calling over her shoulder.
I'm coming. It's okay. It's going to be okay, Munchkin. Oh God. I hope Ryley has the damn car keys.
Her voice withers to a mutter at the tail end of her sentence as she fishes through her empty pockets. Once she's done putting on her jacket, she's all bundled up as she was already dressed for winter and follows her dog out the window.
Okay, boy. I'm going to climb down and then you just jump.
Vil's cut short as Munchkin has already leapt off the roof and plummets into the snow-laden backyard, which thankfully cushions his fall.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Will!
Ryley desperately screams as she turns back to the house, quickly being consumed by the flames. All she can see through the open door is a swirl of orange and red until her eyes almost pop out of her skull as the towering monster with the flamethrower steps out from the blaze and lurches into the threshold of the front door. Cocking his head, he wields his fire lance at her, hauling the muzzle to chest height. Ryley leaps to the side and digs into the snow piled high around her, and she feels the intense flames lick at the soles of her feet as she burrows into the cold. Her entire body is being pierced and paralyzed. Every inch of her is assaulted by the hated caress of the winter snow. But she continues her manic digging as it fills her ears and whispers bitter bile into them. Accept your death. Ryley resists the calling frost and breaches the wintry air from the other side of the snow mound. Heaps of white falling from her body as she makes a stumbled sprint away from the house and into the forest. Another whip of fire hisses at her heels, encouraging her to move faster. Her numb feet can't tell if they're burning or freezing as she tries to avoid the constant licking flames behind her. The further she runs into the fire, the more bitter and horrifying the thoughts popping into her head.
It's so dark and cold. If it wasn't for that flamethrower, I wouldn't be able to see at all.
Flashes of intense light illuminates the night, paired with short intervals of pain from each breath of the dragon behind her. Dodging trees and slipping on wet leaves, it takes all her focus not to fall down and succumb to the numbing cold and burn in an inferno, even as her body begins to betray her, becoming less agile and more sloppy as the cold seeps further into her bones.
Munchkin, this way.
Vil shouts over the roaring winter storm. Munchkin barks and runs away from the house towards the forest.
Oh my god, the truck is this way, Ryley. Where are you?
Ryley is nowhere outside the front of the house. The truck is now lost as snow is quickly piling up around it. Vil crunches and trudges through the snow after Munchkin, who's fleeing into the forest.
Don't see her anywhere. Where could she have gone? Why did she just leave? She's not in the truck. Is a neighbor maybe? But why wouldn't she wait for me? She just left.
Vil laments as she struggles to keep up with Munchkin, following his faint barks as she gets further and further away from their scorching house and deeper into the umbra forest void of light. The snow crunches under her boots, snow audibly plopping against her jacket as the wind whips sparkling flakes in a swirl around her, tugging at her clothes in a hungry bid to find a way inside. Though it can't quite penetrate her warm shield, she can still feel it biting at any snippets of exposed flesh it can. The freezing storm rages all around her, as impatient as an executioner waiting for her to kneel and accept her death. Every step she takes is one more tiresome tap of winter's freezing foot. There's a reason people call it a winter wonderland. It's because the world seems to completely change once the season arrives. The trees are no longer vibrant and alive, swaying in the wind and basking in the sun. Now they lie still, weighed down by heavy clumps of frost, almost sad, suspended in frozen sleep. The usually oh-so-prominent green grass that blankets the ground in a happy green is covered up by a thick layer of crunching soft white. The animals hibernate, and the people cower in their homes, huddling for warmth. After several minutes of loosely following Munchkin's barks, she begins to see glimpses of orange in the distance. Bursts of light explode within the night and rear blazing above the storm. Munchkin barks and returns to her, nipping at her hands before chomping down on her arm sleeve, pulling her towards the light with all of his strength.
What is that? Is that Ryley? I think I see someone over there. Is that fire?
Somehow, a tortured and terrified scream overpowers the roar of the storm, and Wil can hear Ryley's pained screams for help as the tongues of the dragon get closer and closer to eating her alive.
Oh my god, Ryley! Munchkin, go get her. Do something!
With the command given, Munchkin barks and sprints after Ryley with amazing speed, galloping across the frozen waste and through the broken forest. Ryley trips over a root peeking out from the earth and falls forward, landing on the ground. Tears stream down her face as she tries to crawl back up to her feet. Bark, bark, bark! Ryley turns her attention back towards her tormentor and shouts as she watches the Doberman leap at the monster and viciously tackle him backwards, knocking him against a tree, which is where Munchkin kept him, snarling and ripping at the monster's oil-stained attire with his teeth. The figure screams and drops the flamethrower, revealing himself to be nothing but a man under all those fur layers. He tries to grapple with Munchkin as his body swings back and forth in a futile attempt to dislodge the suddenly quite so vicious animal clawing at his chest.
Ryley, come on!
Wil calls, prompting Ryley to eagerly, but slowly, rise to her feet and stumbles through the snow towards her. The tears on her face have frozen into taunting sculptures.
Come here, you're freezing!
Pulling Ryley closer, Wil opens up her jacket and tries her best to tuck her lover inside the folds of her jacket to keep them both warm. But there just isn't enough material. It barely reaches past Ryley's shoulder as she jaggedly ambles alongside her.
We have to go. Our neighbor's house is just over there. I can see the lights.
Ryley is shivering uncontrollably as she desperately clings to Wil's body, trying to keep herself warm. Between broken breaths and shivers, Ryley stammers.
Thank you. I was so scared.
Wil holds her lover tighter and reassures everything will be fine. As they venture into the darkness, Wil shouts back at Munchkin to recall him to her side. The great beast gives one final ruff before releasing the maniac, who drops to the ground with the flamethrower. Munchkin turns on his heel to zip into the forest after his family, before overtaking them entirely and leading them towards safety once more. The man unsteadily rises to his knees and tries to catch his breath after the seemingly never-ending attack. Blood has already frozen down his torso. He knows he's bleeding, but with all the protective gear he dons, he can't find where he's injured exactly. Only the pain is there to remind him he needs medical attention. The man groans as he shakily finds his footing before stooping over to haul his discarded weapon from the forest floor, inspecting it. The flamethrower has gone out during the struggle, and he takes out an instrument to relight the nozzle. The nozzle hisses as the tiny flame emerges. He darts his head in all directions in a mad search for his prey. He pulls the trigger of his weapon and spews forth a raging cry of fire into the trees as he searches the darkness for his targets. Muffled screams accompany the flames as he rages at the loss of his prey.
We're almost there, sweetie.
Wil murmurs to Ryley as they near their neighbor's home, a quaint little cottage, similar to theirs, now a smoking ruin far behind them, nestled deep within the forest. Ryley has lost the ability to speak. Every muscle of her body is locked and chattering with shivers as she barely trudges alongside Wil. Her hair is burnt. Her back is in seething pain from the constant lapping of the madman's flames. Her face is like marble, smooth, freezing, and hard to the touch. Any longer in the cold and she won't be able to move at all. Munchkin barks as they reach the back door of the small house.
Hello? It's Wil and Ryley. We live next door. We need help.
Vil calls out, reaching for the handle. The door swings open with a screeching croak, and the trio enter together, with Munchkin running in first. When they enter the living room, a fire is already crackling softly in the fireplace, so Vil hastily strips her jacket to toss across Ryley's shoulders. Zipping it up, Vil sits her down next to the fire. Ryley gasps at the faint warmth of the flames.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Vil yelps, realizing she might not want to be that close after what happened, so she quickly ushers her to a chair nearby. She leaves her there to warm up as she wanders the house, looking for their neighbors.
We need a phone. We need to call the police.
Vil begins brainstorming a mental to-do list as she explores the bedrooms, hoping she can find some help further in the house.
Hello? We need help. We were attacked and our house.
Her words halt abruptly in her throat with a sore rasp. She swallows them in fear as she enters the bedroom. On the floor before her, a man with a caved-in head is soaking in a pool of his own blood. The smell of iron and death wafts into her nose as the grim sight causes her to back up into the hall.
Ry, we need to go.
Vil calls to the living room, just as Munchkin begins barking again. She hears a heavy, drawn-out creak just barely audible under his booming protest.
Ry, they're dead.
She calls again, her voice rising into a shrill shriek. When she scrabbles into the living room, Ryley is still shivering in the chair, but she's looking right at Vil with a strained face, trying to speak, but not quite able to form the words on her still frozen tongue. Behind her, in the doorway, the tall man stands, his figure almost entirely blotting out the light from the open frame and holding the essence of hell within his grasp. A loud wind roars from behind Vil, and the back door screeches and slams against its latch in the fast-descending winter gale. Snow and pellets of ice storm inside the back of the house like a monstrous beast clawing its way inside, bellowing as it claims this house for its own. Vil can feel the freezing storm beckoning for her soul as it encroaches closer. Drifts of snow snaking past her ankles like icy cobras, whilst the inferno-wielding maniac before her smiles. The whites of his teeth glint in the flickering light of the flames spewing from his hand. The man pulls down the thick cloth covering the lower half of his face and repeats a simple but sadistic question that snuffs out all Wil's hope in one fell blow.
Staying warm?